All right, today we are diving into a really fascinating guide by Kenneth E. Hagin called Praying to Get Results. We're going to break down his key ideas on how to make prayer, actually work and feel less frustrating. And we're going to start with a feeling I think pretty much everyone can relate to.
I mean, it's a super common feeling, right? You pray, you ask for something, you hope, and then nothing, just silence. And it can leave you feeling really confused, thinking, am I just doing this wrong? Well, Hagen's work speaks directly to that feeling of hitting a spiritual brick wall. And this slide, this is the core idea that changes everything. Hagen says we get so confused because we treat all prayer like it's one single activity. But he says, look, that's like trying to play baseball using the rules of football. It's just never going to work. Different types of prayer have their own rules, their own spiritual laws.
So, here's what we're going to get into. We'll start with that foundational idea that prayer has rules. Then we'll dive into the prayer of faith for our own personal needs. What to do when you need a serious breakthrough, how to deal with anxiety, and finally, a really effective way to pray for other people.
Okay, first up, this core concept. To get results, you have to understand which type of prayer fits the situation you're facing. It's all about matching the rules to the game you're actually playing. And here is a perfect example of what we're talking about, these different rule books. On the left, you've got the prayer of consecration. This is all about submission, like Jesus in the Garden of Gethsemane. Here, the phrase, if it be thy will, is absolutely essential. But look at the right. In a prayer of faith, where you're trying to change your circumstances, Hagen says you never use the word if. Think about Jesus at Lazarus' tomb. He didn't say if, he gave a command. Using if in that situation is like trying to score a touchdown on a baseball field. It's just the wrong rule for the game. So let's really dig into that first major prayer type, the prayer of faith. This one is all about activating your own belief to receive something that God has already promised in His Word.
This verse from the book of Mark is the absolute foundation for this kind of prayer. And the key thing to notice is the timing. See how it says, believe that ye receive them, that's present tense, when you pray. The belief has to come first, and then the actual having, the manifestation of it, comes after. So, just to be super clear, the prayer of faith is mostly for you as an individual. It's about your needs, your desires, based on what you see as a promise in the Bible. It's not about getting a bunch of other people to agree with you. Your personal faith is the active ingredient here. And Hagen tells this really powerful story about this. He and some others were praying for a woman with terrible arthritis. He says the power of God was so present, it literally lifted her out of her wheelchair. But in that moment, she got scared, grabbed for the chair, and said, I don't believe I'll ever be healed. And his point is just so stark. Even with divine power right there, her own lack of faith for her own situation canceled it out. Your will is part of the equation. Okay, so what happens when you're in a situation that feels completely, utterly hopeless? This is where Hagen pulls out a totally different rulebook, the strategy of trading your pleas for praise. I mean, the classic example is Paul and Silas, right? They've been beaten up, arrested, and thrown into the deepest, darkest part of a prison with their feet locked in stocks. It is, literally, their darkest hour. And what do? They don't complain, they don't beg, they start singing praises to God, loud enough for everyone else in the prison to hear. Now notice the direct cause and effect here. Hagen really emphasizes that the deliverance, the earthquake, it came while they were praising. The action, their praise, is what unleashed the power that produced the result. It wasn't just a happy coincidence, it was a consequence of what they did. And this isn't just a one-off thing either. Hagen points to an Old Testament story about King Jehoshaphat, who was facing 3 enemy armies at once. So what was his brilliant military strategy? He put the choir at the front of the battle line, and as they started to sing and praise, the enemy armies got confused and turned on each other. The principle is exactly the same. Praise comes before the victory. All right, now let's switch gears from these external battles to the ones that happen inside our own heads. We all deal with worry, and it can be absolutely crippling. For this, Hagen has a very specific rulebook, the prayer of commitment. The biblical instruction for this is so simple and direct. Cast your care on Him. And that word cast, it's an action. It's not a passive hope. It implies a deliberate, decisive moment where you transfer a burden from yourself to God. Hagen breaks this down into a really simple division of labor. Your only job is the act of casting it, that one-time decision to just hand over the worry. After that, it's God's job to carry it.
And here's the crucial part. You can't both be carrying the same weight. If you find yourself still worrying about it, you haven't truly let it go.
And that's it. Once you have committed that care to God, the number of worries you are responsible for is 0. Hagen is super clear on this. You solve the problem of anxiety not by begging God to do something, but by you doing what he said, casting the care.
And finally, let's talk about the rules for praying for other people. This is something so many of us do, but Hagen suggests there's a much more powerful and effective way to go about it. He basically argues that our standard, well-intentioned prayer of, God, please bless so-and-so, just doesn't hit the mark. It's too vague. It's like asking a doctor to just make my friend better without telling them any of the symptoms. Hagen points out that the Apostle Paul was never, ever vague when he prayed for the churches. So here are some really practical examples taken right from Paul's own prayers. Instead of that general blessing, you can get specific. You can pray for them to be filled with wisdom or for the eyes of their understanding to be opened. See how that shifts the focus? It goes from a kind of abstract wish to a really targeted, powerful request based on Scripture. And this was the ultimate goal. Paul's specific prayers were all aimed at helping other believers grow in their spiritual understanding and get revelation. He was praying for their spiritual enlightenment, not just for their general happiness. And that's a huge shift in how we can approach praying for the people we care about.
So as we wrap this up, the big takeaway from Hagen's work is really this. Prayer isn't just a single hammer you use for every problem, it's an entire toolbox. The prayer of faith is like a wrench for your own needs. The prayer of praise is a sledgehammer for breaking down impossible walls. And the prayer of commitment is the specific tool you use to dismantle the inner machine of worry. So the real question to ask yourself is, what tool does your situation call for right now?